Lindy Ortega and Lovers in Love from her Liberty album 5 o'clock. Métis Matters time.
Listen to Métis Matters Radio. I'm your guest, Derek White Sky Cloud. Welcome, folks. This is CFRO 100.5 FM. And yes, it's coming close. This is actually Hump Day. I'm sorry. Hump Day is actually, what you call rabbit dance. They have to jump over, hills and vales, that sort of thing. Anyways, the person that actually wrote, who played that song is actually one of our great fiddle players. Her name is Kathleen Nisbet, and also following some of the people that actually backed her up was actually Tyson Naylor and Steve Charles and Patrick Metzger. The CD, I have a brand new CD here that she's given me last week. So I'm playing her song. One of her songs is called The Rabbit Dance, folks. So, it relates to Easter weekend, long weekend, 4 days off. Those of you who actually got a job, you get 4 days off. Those who are self-employed, you got to work.
I certainly do. All 5 nights at Lanaloo's this week, Wednesday through Sunday. Yum, yum.
You realize he just gave himself some back up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. Could be digging ditches instead.
Yeah, but you're not going to dig any ditches.
I hope not.
No. No, you get.
Sometimes I have other duties there.
Well, yeah. Or digging ditch and doo-doo. That's right.
Yeah.
So if you want to find Kathleen's page, website, to see, hear some more of her other music, it's Kathleen Nisbet, okay, Kathleen, and nisbet.com. That's where her website is. Have a long look. Anybody who's out there, yes, I know, and a big shout out, folks, to you also in the Facebook chat room live. Nice to see you folks here in the chat room. And we've also got some really cool people, some new people calling in or actually watching us live on the station.
Cool. I just want to mention Kathleen Nesmith. She's also in a band called Viper Central, too.
Yeah.
And she
Viper
also
Central.
plays at the Heatley every once in a while on Sunday nights.
Okay.
I saw her last Sunday.
I think I saw her play at one of the theaters. What was that theater?
What, the Rio?
The Rio.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was there.
Most
It was Rio.
likely, yeah.
Yeah, she was on stage.
She's busy.
I watched her video.
Yeah.
Holy crap, these guys can play. Mm-hmm. Country music is here to stay. Yeah, but she actually did 2 CDs. It's called Métis Dance Hall Volume 1 and Métis Dance Hall Volume 2. So I thought it was pretty interesting. It's one is the long version, one's a short version. And she gave me these 2 complimentary CDs to play, so I'm going to play the heck out of it because it relates to Easter. We're going to actually play a few more songs later on throughout the evening. Tonight, also, too, we're going to actually have Mr. Dale Haggerty call in, and I thought we decided I want to carry on doing this Métis roundtable, folks, because this is kind of cool. I got Dale Haggerty, he'll be calling in, Mr. Keith Henry, who'll be calling in. He's actually the president of BC Métis Federation, and and Dale Haggerty, he's actually also the president of the Michif Historical and Cultural Preservation Society, which is the Métis Museum. Both these men have got a lot of history. And it's always cool to have both these guys talking together because, you want to share, have your round table, and it's always good to talk about certain things. We have so many things that we want to talk about quickly here. Let's see. I'm sure Keith's going to call in about it later on, but that's basically, we'll be talking about the proposed amendments to the Child, Family, and Community Services Act. I mean, this is one of the proposals we've been doing. What I do want to talk about first, and that is on the program, is we need to get more Métis history shared in the schools. We have Native Indigenous programs, or Indigenous programs teaching kids about the First Nations history, and Inuit possibly, but we have hardly anything Métis taught. Like, we have not really hit enough, we try to get to the schools. It's supposed to be a mandate that was signed many years ago that they were supposed to teach Métis history to the students in these schools. But according to School District 36 and 32, was it 36, 32, or 35, they said we'll take it into consideration, and they were doing a little bit of Métis history sharing, and they used to have us come in once in a while, very thinly once in a while, to share Métis history. But they kept on focusing more on First Nations or for Indigenous program, basically, the teachings of the West Coast Way, the teachings of other traditions, but never us. And I believe that we need to get more out there. What we need, folks, from you, our listeners, and our viewers is more support. We need more support from people like you to let the public know that Métis history is really important for the kids to know the truth. And basically, not because just to Louis Riel, more things regarding what Métis do, because there's so many people have actually have a lot of history in their past that carries on way back to the 1600s. And I got these 2 men coming on tonight.
One of them is here.
Both these men have got history. So, have I got Dale or have I got Keith?
Got Dale.
I got Dale. Dale, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Now, you're way up north now, my friend.
Yeah, I'm up in Prince Rupert right now.
Okay, so you know what? I want to tell you something too. I talked to a lady yesterday who lives in Prince Rupert, and she said she's giving a big shout out to you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, I saw her at the market on Sunday, and she says, I know Mr. Haggerty. He's one of my students, goes to the school, and that's his teacher.
There you go.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting.
That's very nice. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because I had a phone here that was on a pay-as-you-go here. So, but now I'm on a unlimited plan, so I can actually phone in and talk to you guys now.
Good.
So.
Well, we're going to actually, Keith Henry will be calling in later on too. We actually do what you call a little Métis roundtable, because it's a long weekend. It's Easter.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do on that Friday and Sunday?
Well, I get off. I'm actually off on Friday, and I'm just going to just clean up around the yard here and just get ready because this is going to be my last year up in Prince Rupert. I'm actually I'm going to just this will be my last year teaching, so I'm looking forward to it. So I'm just going to make sure the area is nice and clean and ready for the end of June. So,
So
yeah.
I was talking earlier tonight. I was talking about we need to get more Métis history shared in the schools, and really get it out there. We need the school board to really listen to us, and we need to come in there more often, not like once every 6 months. I'm talking about at least once a month. Spend the time with the students. Does that make any sense, Dale?
Oh, it is, but right now, schools are going through a real rough time because now the new government is, allowing them to, the teachers, they're giving them the class sizes that they're wanting, and now they're going to be negotiating for some more money. And of course, school board districts, they're there just to try to make sure that, what money they get is got to go around for everybody. So they can't hire a lot of facilitators to come up and talk about Métis culture. And yet that's what the idea is. Our federal government is trying to push that, but it's still in the hands of the province. And of course, some people don't believe in the Métis culture that's still alive in British Columbia, so it's difficult. So,
But they also say,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but they also say, Dale, the Métis don't, like you talk to Mr. Charche, Clem Charche, he'll say that the Métis does not even exist. There's no such thing as a Métis in Nova Scotia or no Métis up east. As far as he's concerned, the Métis only were from Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, but yet, he's creating that Red River only.
Yeah.
And yet, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, Mr. Chartrand isn't educated, even though that he's got all these certificates. He's really not educated. He's, I don't know. I've met him, and he's just a typical want to take the money and run sort of thing. And I know he's trying to protect Manitoba, but he's in Saskatchewan, and he doesn't even believe in the Manitoba system. So never mind the Alberta systems. He's just not. He's not our leader. He's.
So you're talking about Clem Charche, not Clem Chartrand.
Yeah. Both of them. Both of them. They're just.
There's Clem Charche, and there's who it is, Mr. Chartrand.
Yeah, but they're both in the wrong category. I mean, I know they're trying to protect what they think they're trying to protect, but look at me. My family came from Saskatchewan to Alberta to BC. I mean, and that happened in the 50s. And my uncles were in BC in the 40s, the 30s and the 40s. So don't give me that kind of line that Métis didn't travel. Well, that's what we were. We were travelers. We were entrepreneurs. We were looking for that freedom, to get our own land and build our own colonies and whatever. And
so we were looking for our own settlement. We were looking for our own place to actually lay our head on a pillow. I'm not talking about a rock. I mean, basically lay our head on a pillow, and find a place so we can say we claim this as our own territory or a area that's ours. And if you look at in the year 1910, I mean, look at all the Métis that were kicked out of Jasper in Alberta because they wanted to make it into a park. But yet anybody who's non-native that migrated there were allowed to stay.
Yeah. Yeah, the government of the day, or the actual British government at the time before Canada's 1867, promised that whoever worked with Hudson's Bay was entitled to land grants and all this stuff wherever they could find a settlement, and that was part of the agreement that when Rupert's Land was turned over to Canada, that was part of the agreement. And so far, the federal government has reneged on everything that they've done. They're no better than anybody else. The politicians today promise, and then lie, and steal. That's the way it's going to be. I mean, there was a settlement here in 1885, and it was called, here in British Columbia, it was called the Kelly Lake Settlement. Yep. And I've actually seen the land grant papers that prove that it was. There's a historical sign that was put by the province on their, you're entering historical Métis script land. And then, give me a break.
Well, actually, I was notified here today, Dale. There was a friend of mine actually sent me information today that on a newspaper column in Alberta that there's a Métis organization in northern Alberta just basically signed a deal and paid in the millions to own their own Métis land up near the Fort Chip region near Fort McMurray. And even though they said, it's wonderful to own this land, and they want to settle, basically now they're going to call it their own settlement, their Métis settlement there. But here's the thing that really gets me. Why did the government actually sell it to them? Like, how I'm trying to point out is, why did the Métis buy it? If they're entitled to that territory then, they were kicked off it once before, and the government said, okay, now you give us $1 billion or $1 million, whatever the value of the land is, and then we'll give it to you, okay? Like, here, we'll sign over, you can have it. You know why? Because they don't want it, because they already used the freaking land up. Because it's right next to the tar sands. Yeah,
Derek, if they can keep us fighting amongst ourselves, they're winning.
Mm-hmm.
Circle the wagons and shoot inwards. You ever hear that saying? No, you don't. But you do in the Métis world, you do. And that's exactly what the government wants to do. So they'll give this little organization $2 or $3 million, and they'll say, well, you got to divide it between the certain people. Yep. And then, of course, what happens is they don't do that. They keep it for themselves or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, of course, it causes conflict. They keep us. That's how they keep the pressure off themselves. Instead of just saying, well, okay, you give them $2 million. Now the guys that got the $2 million should use that money to hire lawyers and proper people to go after more than just $2 million. But you know what? That's not what it's all about. As soon as you get the money, it's all about greed. Yeah. Money is greed.
Yeah, it's like whoever can take as much land as possible. I was actually doing the research on what's called crown land, and the definition of crown land. And most people don't realize when they means crown land means it's supposed to be owned by the Queen. But yet, if there's territorial lands that were never signed over to the Crown, that means you have that right to own that territory, that piece of land.
Yeah.
Well, the Queen never signed over anything, did she? The Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba was not, or I suppose, sorry to say, according to Riel, that's not considered as Crown land. She never owned it. So, because he signed in, that's the reason why it was the Métis territory.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, and yet today, people are trying to tell me that the Queen owns everything, including what Riel was sitting on. I'm going like, who in the heck do you think you are to tell me that you're saying everything is Crown?
Yeah, but that wasn't the fact. Crown land, in my interpretation, is they are the stewards of the land. They're the ones that look after the land. Exactly. They're the ones that are in charge of it. They don't own it. They just use the Crown because we use the Queen as a figurehead. And that's the Crown. that we respect, the Queen's crown, or the King's crown, or the Queen Victoria's crown.
Yeah.
The land is the province don't own the land. They're the stewards of the land.
Mm-hmm.
The federal government don't own the land. They're the stewards of the land. They don't own it. It's to what they think. And I believe the homestead law is still in effect. They haven't taken it out of our Canadian Constitution that you can actually go and live on Crown land and homestead it. But there is rules to their homestead landing, and that's why a lot of people don't do it.
I got a big shout out from Earl Belcourt. And
Yes.
he's basically wrote in here, he says, Frank Camp was one of those Métis that was part of the Jasper. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but his very good friend Dan LaFrance would likely have some input on what happened with Frank.
Yeah.
So, there's like I said, that's probably because of 1910, but, you know, the thing is that we have so much given that, like, basically, this were a lot of the Métis traveled in different directions. You know, they didn't always go to Saskatchewan where Riel was. They actually, you know, whether it's Alberta, northern Alberta, southern Alberta, north, south, east, west of Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, some parts of Saskatchewan. Like, you were on Montreal Lake region when you were a school teacher there too.
Montreal Lake, yeah. That was,
so
yeah.
Let's put it this way. I mean, how many Métis were in your area when you were there at the time?
Well, there's lots of Métis that are up in there. A matter of fact, there's just up the highway. I'm not too sure of the community, but I've met elders, Métis elders, that are living on reserved land.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not. They have their real rights to live there, because when they were, but they're not First Nation people, and they say that. They say, you know, but they have their choice. They could go and live on the reserve or take the land scripts. And these people choose to live on the reserves because they most likely had more cousins or uncles or aunts and family members, so they did this, but they will never be First Nation. They were always a Métis status in their class, but they still live on reserves, and they still homestead there. They don't own the land. They just live in cabins and houses or whatever, and all through these reserves. And I met a bunch of them. Some of them, the newer First Nation people, are angry that they did this, but I mean and they were blaming the Métis for coming in and stealing their land, but it wasn't that way. It was because cousins and uncles and aunts, and you got to remember, we're all related, First Nation Métis. I mean, for goodness sakes.
Well, we
had our choice. My great-grandfather, Isidore Villeneuve, had a choice. He could have went on the reserves in Manitoba, or he could have get land scripts. And of course, he self-declared himself as a Métis, and they were trying to build their own little community, colonies, and that's what he did. He self-claimed himself as a Métis person and stayed with the script land.
You know, here's the thing, Dale. I remember years ago, watching a documentary, and it was done by a non-native person, like people call a white person, whatever, non-native historian. And I remember him saying, in his belief of history, and he shared this on television, that it was the Métis' fault that hunted down the buffalo. It was the Métis' fault that did all the trapping. It was the Métis' fault that starved the Indian, that starved the First Nations people. It was the Métis' fault that did this and did that. So it's almost like they're putting the blame on our people.
Oh, they did.
You know, and yet, why did he do this? Because someone in government told him to say that. And he said, well, if you want this documentary, you got to say this. And when I saw that in one of the shows, and I possibly could be on APTN at the time, And I thought, you son of a you-know-what, because I was mad because I thought, that's not right. And why and how in the hell did you get away with it? Now, I'm curious if there's how many phone calls there were to that station when he said that, you know.
Oh.
And then, like, Earl even says, like, he has, I have Allard Cousins, he says, on the Upper Nicola Reserve. So Dale saying that we have Métis on reserve is quite true. He says it is quite true, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing about you're talking about the buffalo there.
Yeah.
What the trains, once they got the tracks back and forth, they actually had target practice outside the reserves. They would actually send the military and non-military people on the trains just to shoot down the buffalo. Yeah. And they would leave the carcasses behind.
There was the soldiers that did that. They already off the trains. They were doing target shooting, But they still blame the Métis.
And it's been known fact that the Métis were going behind them, and they were taking the bones and using the bones for their medicines and whatever they were doing. They were. There's even a historical pictures where the bones of the buffaloes were just piled up high, and of course, you know, no, it doesn't say, well, here's what the Métis did. We destroyed our buffalo, our food, you know. What it was the government was trying to starve the goddamn First Nation people into suppression. And by doing it, they killed off the only thing that they could do, food. And that's what they did. Food, clothing.
Folks,
and that's
Dale's angry.
Got me going, Derek.
I know, but this is radio, my friend.
I know. Sorry for the blinking. But, you know, that's what it was. That's the only way they could suppress these people and make them sign treaties and give their land away. And they did that. They did this, and then on top of this, they hired people to look after the forts and these places where they were trading goods and stuff like this. And they would have these guys cheat them by literally when they're bringing in their beaver pelts, they would actually have the blacksmith extend the rifle barrels. So they were 36 inches normally, and they would make them to 40 inches just so they could get that extra pelts. Yeah.
There's
a real story about how they did this in northern Alberta, in near the Saskatchewan border, where they actually did this, and unfortunately they ran into some smart First Nation people. Mm-hmm. And what they did was, this is all at that same time of the Riel Rebellion and all the First Nation people being starved and stuff like this. You know, you don't go to war because you're not happy. You're going to war for a reason. Either they're being starved out, lied to, cheated, and that's what you go to war for. So these First Nation people that went out and sacrificed their lives to go out and fight for their rights, that's all they were doing, was fighting for their rights.
Well,
a right to live and exist.
Let's talk about buffalo real quick, because I know there's part of this too. The Hudson's Bay Company did hire the Métis to hunt the buffalo, but because they hunt the buffalo not always just for the meat, but also for the hide, because they needed to make these belts. The belts they usually were like, the hide was so thick they used them for factories as belts in the factories.
Oh yeah,
right?
Coats.
Yeah, that's what they did, and then also to go further with that, your ancestors were part of the resistance.
Oh, yes.
Because there's a front page, there's actually every catalog, every little booklet has two of your ancestors on the front cover.
Oh, yes. I guess it's a long line of, disturbers, I guess.
Okay, so, this is basically what it is. Folks, if you need to talk to someone who actually knows, who's got historical background regarding even the part of resistance, was Dale's two ancestors. Dale, when you want to share with your listeners...
Well, I got a great grandfather, Isidore Villeneuve, which was my greatest. He's my mentor in my life. Things when I carry a flag, I always bless it to him because he's my direct descendants. But I have a Métis great grandfather that's buried in the original 15 soldiers that were actually killed in Bataille. So I actually have a family member that actually sacrificed for the Canadian rights for us as Métis people. I have one that actually gave his life up to make things right for us Métis people. You know, but I don't go talking about that all the time. I'm just so proud that what he did, and he fought for his rights. And it wasn't about cheating governments or they were going out and killing people. All they wanted to do was have the right to live where they were told that they could live without having the government come in and change things on them every week.
Yep.
You know, promise a railway through it. And what do? They don't even put a rail up there. You know, they just wanted just to kick us around because we were a pain in the federal conservatives' butt, and that's what it was. John A. MacDonald was a conservative person.
Yeah. That's the reason why Harper said
them to run our government.
That's why Harper said MacDonald was his hero when Harper was in government as Prime Minister. Folks, we're going to take a break. Dale, sit back and relax for a few minutes. We're going to basically play another song. And again, another one of Kathleen Nisbet's songs called Rye Straw. Big John McNeil is Martha Campbell. All three of these songs are combined in one. This is one of her number of songs. You listen to Métis Matters Radio. And I'm your host, Derek White Sky Cloud, on 100.5 FM. Oh, you're listening to CFRO 100.5 FM, Métis Matters Radio. I'm your host, Eric White Sky Cloud. And yes, that song is actually played by Kathleen Nisbet. And it's a combination of Rice Straw, Big John McNeil, and Martha Campbell. It is a really good CD. I love the combination. And the CD is actually called Métis Dance Hall. She does the long version and the short version. So, it's when I heard it, this is one of my favorite ones. I mean, there's a lot of really good songs in there, but I love the combination. I want to give credit to other people that also gave her a hand too. That's J.J. Lavallee. He's actually was part of he actually helped her play with her as well on one of the tracks 3 and 13 and track 7. Also, there's Tyson Naylor as piano and Steve Charles on guitar, Patrick Metzger on bass, and apparently. Our studio master here knows one of the guys.
I know Kathleen. I don't know Metzger.
There you go.
Mr. Metzger.
Mr. Metzger. So, you'll be hearing from him really soon, folks. So, anyways, tonight we're talking about a different variety of things regarding Métis history because we want to talk about so many things that, yes, people always have their bones to pick. And also, it's also the long weekend coming up here, 4 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Monday, which is the long weekend. And it's also Happy Rabbit Bunny Day. And folks, to let you know out there, actually, I have a bunny suit. Not a Playboy bunny suit. I'm actually had my own rabbit suit. I've actually had it for many years. And every Easter, as much as I possibly can, I like to go out and hand out Easter eggs to the kids. But this year, I'm going to see if I can just go out there on the side of the road and lift my tail and see if I can see how much attention I can get off the side of the road. And
like Bugs Bunny?
Like Bugs Bunny, yeah. Hey, what's up, Doc?
What a maroon. I love that. I love it. What a maroon.
Like my carrot? Dale, are you there, my friend?
Yeah, I'm still here. That's good. I remember seeing you in your bunny suit. So.
Yeah, he remembers me in my bunny suit. You know what? I remember years ago when we were at Métis Family Services and we had Métis night, and Bob Kelly, Moosh and Bob actually he was teaching the kids how to do the rabbit dance.
Oh yeah.
In the hall. And that night, I remember this really well. I remember that night, Bob says to me, "Derek, you got your rabbit suit?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "You want to show up in the rabbit suit? We're gonna actually surprise the kids." So he got them to do the rabbit dance, and then I snuck in the door, and then Bob grabbed me, and I'm dancing in my own suit with the kids in the rabbit dance. And it was fun for a couple of minutes. All of a sudden, 2 kids turned around, and they yelled and screamed and ran away and hid in the corner.
Wow.
They were afraid of the rabbits.
Oh yeah.
He goes, "Oh my God!"
Yeah.
The kid was so scared of the rabbit.
I really miss doing things with Bob. We did a lot of things with Métis Family Services and cultural camps, and and we had one incident there where we'd have them with the kids sleeping in the teepees, and of course we'd tell ghost stories, and we'd be way out in Maple Ridge, way out there in past Mission, and we'd be telling ghost stories, and of course, the kids we'd have things going on, talking about the little people, the aliens, and having lights that we could pull along this. We'd have lights that we could break, and they would glow, these glow sticks, and we'd have them tied.
Folks, before you go any further than that one, let's talk about. We gotta do that one story. Have you tell that one story. Bob was telling the story regarding this guy, and now Dale was there as a camp cook, but the kids didn't pay attention to Dale, right? And they were focusing on Bob's story, and Bob was telling the story regarding this man who would carry this lantern at night. And you want to go into that story, Dale? Oh
yeah. Well, what it was Bob would start out with this. He says that these people that lived out in this area, they were being chased off the land, and they hid into the caves. And eventually, what happened is their eyesight couldn't adjust to the light, so they'd only come out at night. And of course, they'd only have a lantern just so they could see around through the dark. And of course, what we did was we saw this gentleman walking along the highway, low heat highway, and of course Bob would say, "Shh, shh, don't say anything, don't get his attention. We don't want him to come through the camp," because his eyes were really big and they were like silver dollars, and they were glowing and stuff like this. And we didn't want the kids to get scared and scream, so don't say anything. And of course, this gentleman would walk by the campground on low heat highway, and of course, we get the kids in there, and of course, he would say the guy was just probably walking down to the store down just a block. So what I did was I got dressed up in I have a blue, beautiful capote, and when you put the hood on it, you can't even see my face. It's so dark. And of course, I had this little red light lantern.
And also, it was fairly foggy out there that night.
Oh, yeah, it was.
And that really added to it.
Dressed up and light the candle, light the red thing, and of course, I started walking through the camp, and Bob started saying, "Shh, guys, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. Don't try to attract them." And of course, I'd walk really slow, and I would stop, turn my head around to see, put the lantern up to the thing, so if I could see people. And I'm telling you, we had lots
scared
of fun.
The kids back in the teepee. I mean, we had over 20 kids in the camp, folks. I was there. Scared them in the teepee. They wouldn't come out for a while.
Oh, I'll tell you, I'll tell you, we had lots of fun with that.
But see, we don't. Here's the thing: is Dale, we always had traditional camps. We had Métis camps for the kids.
Oh yeah.
You know, we've lost that. I mean, I've never heard of anybody talking about doing traditional camps for Métis kids anymore. You know, or just even traditional camps. And then, I understand every parent wants every child to be signed up or to be protected and that sort of thing. They're not going to get hurt, and that's fine. We've had a couple of camps. We did one way up in the Mission region, where remember you and I were there. That one with Bob as well. We did that one way up in Mission, where that was actually that one site was actually an old and that was an old prison place. It used to be an old prison yard at one time, and that's where all the inmates used to live there. And then they changed into a campground. Yeah. And that's way in the bush. I mean, that's where bears were. But we still had the kids out there, and we all had fun. And you and I got on that big, huge boat of ours, our canoe, and
it was a 36-foot.
Yeah.
It was a 30-foot-6 Voyager canoe.
Yeah, and you and I brought that thing around on our own.
Oh yeah.
How many guys can bring a 36-foot canoe around the corner?
Oh yeah.
It was on the river. Huge. Oh, we had fun.
Elouette Lake. That was Elouette Lake.
Yeah, Elouette Lake. That was beautiful up there. And, the weather was beautiful.
We did lots of things with our kids.
The weather was beautiful.
Kids that we were looking after, they were all kids in care. They would never have the opportunity. Yeah. They'd never have an opportunity. Social services wouldn't give them the time of day. They would just say, we took care of that. That's what our agency did. Our Métis Family Services was there for the kids to make sure that our kids were getting their culture. They were making sure they were taken care of. They were getting all kinds of clothing that we needed to provide for them. They were being provided with the traditional foods and stuff like this. So we were trying to do that with our kids in care and take that horror feeling out of their things, even if they went for 3 or 4 nights, stay in a teepee and do their things. It was a very enjoyable thing for us to do. And the funny thing about this is, people, Derek and I didn't get paid to do this.
No, we volunteered.
We were volunteers.
Yeah.
But we cared so much for our kids that were in care that we see these people on the streets and they say, how are you doing, Uncle Dale? And it's 10 years later, and they said, I remember you from the camp.
Do you remember that little boy that actually cut his leg?
Yeah.
Remember all the camp counselors are freaked out. They're going to call an ambulance and have him take him to the hospital, right? And they're going to shut down the whole camp. And I said, no, stop. I said, I got medicine here. I said, put the boy on the table, and I said to him, I says, no, like he accidentally fell in the lake, like he wasn't supposed to be in there. He was told, but there were sharp rocks in there, and he didn't listen, and he fell, and he cut his leg, and it was fairly deep. Yeah. So I got a hold of him.
The actual cut was actually, sorry, Derek, the actual cut was there. It was prior. Yeah. But we wrapped it up so the water wouldn't get in it. But he still hurt himself anyway.
But what I did is I put the medicine in there. It's a special medicine that I made, and I put it in the cut, and I closed it. We sealed it all up, and he was told to sit on the table for the remaining of the day, and then, to take care of it. So we didn't take him they had to call no ambulance, didn't call his parents, because you don't want to panic over it. And so we waited for about maybe half a day, or the next day, and we took off the bandage, and it sealed itself. It was actually the cut wasn't there no more. So, like you said, 10 years later, that boy seen me at an event, and he says, "Hi, Uncle Derek, how are you doing?" And I said, "Good." And he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "I think so." And he says, "I'm the one that cut my leg in the camp when you guys were out there." And I said, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "How is your leg?" And he says, "Look," and there was hardly even a scar. You can barely see it.
Yeah.
So that tells me that we took good care of him.
Oh yes, and the child, I remember, he says, "Don't call because they're going to just take me home, and I want to be here with the kids." And
because everybody was worried. I want to talk about tonight, Dale. I want to actually do a little bit of a talk here. I want to share something with the public real quickly here off of the BC Métis Federation website regarding proposed amendments to the Child, Family and Community Services Act. The BC Métis Federation sent a letter to the Provincial Ministry of Children and Family Development today as MCFD reviews proposed amendments to the Child, Family and Community Service Act. They wrote, "Dear Deputy Minister Bond, thank you for your recent letter concerning proposed changes to the Child, Family and Community Services Act. The CFCSA, the BC Métis Federation, is indeed encouraged to see changes happening within the system to better protect our Métis children, families and communities. We are very familiar with the report submitted by Grand Chief Ed John and have read and studied it thoroughly. It is our understanding that the provincial government has promised to implement all of his recommendations. We are also very familiar with the articles outlined in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which is called UNDRIP. UNDRIP, okay. In your letter, you state that you are interested in working together with the Indigenous communities in a better way in order to support the children that are before us now. We too are interested in protecting our children with immediate action. We must make it clear from the outset that when you speak of community involvement, you must make a distinction between Métis, First Nations, and Inuit communities. Within those, you must recognize that each community is responsible for its own members. One community cannot be delegated to speak on behalf of another, nor should there be any suggestion that any Indigenous children and family agency represents our interest. MCFD cannot sign an agreement with one community and expect the other Indigenous community to quietly stand by and allow the other group to make decisions concerning our Métis children. Therefore, the BC Métis Federation does not and will not accept any other Métis group speaking on our behalf concerning our children. Any consultation concerning our children should be done directly through our office and our BC Métis Federation Child Welfare Department. We'll be happy to communicate with you regarding what we feel is the best interest in our children and our community. This is in line with UNDRIP and the Constitutional Act. With regard to the sections of Grand Chief Ed John's report that you suggest to include in the revised CFCSA, we note that you have included recommendation numbers, and there's numbers written in there. We also note that you have excluded many others. The CFCSA is a valuable document to be used as a general guideline that it is in need of updating. However, we also note that legislation is only valuable if it is used as a tool in the best interest of children and families. All too often, however, we have found that it is used as a tool to protect the director instead of the Métis children. The sections you have proposed, though useful, do not affect real change of our Métis families and communities unless there is a real desire to change on the part of the MCFD and Indigenous social workers who have worked their careers engaging in the 60s scoop mentality and continue with these practices under the guise of exceptions, committees, and contracted designated Indigenous groups. There can be no real change for our people and another generation of our children will be lost. You speak of consultation with Indigenous groups, and you speak of respecting our customs, but you have neglected to include sections, and it shows the sections numbers, Ed John's recommendations. These sections deal directly with what we hold precious and sacred. If there is a legitimate interest by provincial government to make effective change and to show our people that our intentions are genuine, these sections must be included in proposed amendments to the CFCSA. These sections include preserving the relationship between children and their parents and respecting our constitutional right to exercise our customs and traditions through custom adoptions. These adoptions are part of our way of life, and government interference will no longer be tolerated. One of our own children, Métis child known as SS, is still being held in foster care across the country when she has been adopted by our traditional family custom. Meanwhile, the provincial government speaks of reconciliation, yet still spends millions in court fighting this adoption, and no one will engage with our Métis community concerning our child. As stated earlier, designated agencies who are not part of our community have no business speaking of our BC Métis Federation community without our direct consultation and involvement. We understand that you say that this work is just beginning, but these added sections that respect our way of life and our traditions can be added quickly and easily. Custom adoption is recognized on your website and in BC Adoption Act. Yet, despite these policy statements, it appears not a single custom adoption has been recognized in BC courts since 1996. We are not interested in veiled attempts to placate the Indigenous population. It is time for action, and it would be preferable to work in collaboration, but we will not stand by and allow another generation of Métis children in our community to be damaged by provincial government interference. We must work with the goal of protecting the most vulnerable, our Métis children. Therefore, once again, I stress to please add to the CFCSA the suggested sections concerning family preservation and an easier way of recognizing our Métis custom adoptions for the benefit of our children. It is time for government litigation to cease and for our focus to be bringing our children home. Let's work together. Sincerely, Keith Henry, President of the BC Métis Federation and members.
Wow, that's a good letter.
He did a heck of a letter.
Yes.
I mean, this is something.
Very good.
This is something I've always been concerned about. Because when I heard that they moved their office, and you and I were talking about this last week, we heard that the BC Métis Federation, or not Federation, BC Métis Family Services, they moved their office and they downsized it. And when they start moving their office, downsize it, and they don't have any more Métis programs for the kids, that tells me that they stopped caring. Because that's why we had that extra building, was to work with the kids and teaching and helping them with their future. And, these things can happen, and I find it very discerning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, that's what they always wanted to do. They just, give us enough money just so we can hang ourselves, and then if there's a mistake, they can take it back.
Yeah. And also a big shout out to Kendra Crowell. She says, Jordan was at that camp, and he's now 24 and still tells everyone it has been the best time he's ever had. Big shout out to nephew and auntie and sister and also Mom Ann Crowell. Big shout out to you folks. Big love to you guys. Miss you guys.
Yes.
Okay. We're coming to an ending now, folks. If you want to find out more about Dale and his work, go to the Michif MétisMuseum.org, Michif, M-I-C-H-I-F, MétisMuseum.org. And if they want to reach Dale when he gets back, give me a call, and I'll give you Dale's number, and then you can have a chat with him.
There you go.
Yeah. Anything else, Dale, you want to share?
Derek, this is really good what we're doing. We talk about a little bit of our history. We talk about the issues that we need to take care of. We gotta work together as Métis people. I mean, it's as soon as the money gets involved with people, we just forget who we are. And Métis people are just loving, only want to take care of their people. but then we have different people in all religions and states and stuff.
We should, Dale, we should be talking about really is having to have a traditional Métis reenactment camp again.
Yes. We need to get the people back.
Let's work on that.
Yeah.
On behalf of the BC Métis Federation and myself, Derek White Sky Cloud, and Mr. Dale Haggerty, we thank you so much for listening to us, folks. We'll chat with you next week, and have a great Easter. Yes, Wubbus. Easter. Don't eat the rabbit. Eat the Easter eggs. I mean, well, not as long as the rabbit's chocolate, that's okay. Anyways, take care, folks. You're listening to Métis Matters Radio on the CFRO 100.5 FM. Chat, folks. Take care. Bye.
Good night.